and I'm the co-founder of Funaki. And today is a pretty cool day because it's our last real talk for 2021. I need to check that. Morena, Alex, how are you?
Morena. Very good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
So good to have you here, and also for this to be our last real talk. Because when I think about this year, the thing, other than COVID, the thing that really changed for me was this introduction into the meta Web3 world.
Yeah, and actually even just to be here in person is quite special. I mean, I've been doing a lot of podcasts, interviews, meetings, but it's all very much been, through Zoom, Google, whatever it may be. So to actually come here physically and have that physical interaction is quite cool.
It's a different level of intenseness, don't you think?
Yeah, put me on the spot.
Yeah, well, but you look into the eyes of it, and it's just. I did 2 of these yesterday, and I was wiped.
Yeah,
right, and then I was awake at like 3:30 this morning, going, right, let's go, and I'm like, no, I need to calm down, right?
Yeah.
But it is nice to actually see people again. This week is I think I've been in the office in the studio here 3 days in a row. It was the first time in 11 weeks.
Wow.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing for us as well is we've grown so quickly, especially through lockdown, that we actually had our Christmas party last week, and it was the first time that I'd met the vast majority of my team.
How many staff in Non-Fungible Labs?
We're quickly approaching 30. We were at I think 3-4 months ago. We are quite an international team. I think about 40% in New Zealand. But, it's the nature of what we're doing with the Metaverse and kind of, it's a 24-hour industry. It's all about bringing people together wherever they are in the world. So we want the best talent in the world. They don't just have to be local. Actually, our sister company, Altered State Machine, has kind of been stealing all the best local talent anyway. So
have they? Do they steal from your team?
No, not from us.
From the others?
No. They've just got really good relationships in place, and they're doing some incredible stuff as well. But they're snatching up all the best local talent, so we're reaching out more international.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Hey, so everyone, I should actually do a proper welcome to Alex. So welcome. It's great to have you here. Alex has spent 15 years working between here and UK, London.
Yep.
How long did you have in London?
About 8 years.
8 years. Music, events, tech, entertainment, brand strategy, humanitarian, MW Productions. You joined Studio.xyz.
Yep.
Startup creative agency and venture studio. Director of operations there, right?
Yep.
And then you came back early 2021.
Yeah, early this year.
To New Zealand.
Yeah, it was actually a bit unexpected, to be honest. It's a family emergency. My dad ended up in hospital. Fortunately, he's okay now, but at the time, the prognosis wasn't looking good. And, we had the letters from the doctors basically saying, he's got a few weeks left. So I guess I was, very fortunate to actually be able to kind of get expedited through the process then. It all just completely came out of the blue. And then suddenly, while I was in isolation, it all kind of, he got back to relative normal. I mean, he's late stage Parkinson's, so normal is relative. But it's been great to kind of really be able to come home and, obviously reconnect with the family, spend time with him and my brother and, the rest of my family.
It's special, right? But
exactly.
That moment when you're offshore, and you got that phone call,
yeah, it's it's not what anyone really wants to ever receive. And yeah, it's interesting because we have all of these best. I think the last 2 years in particular have taught you that no matter what your plans are, life often has other plans for you, and you've got to be able to adapt and evolve.
My wife, who's Afrikaans, right? Afrikaans Dutch. Her parents live in Sydney, and her mum is not well, and she hasn't seen her for 2 years.
Wow!
And so we're going in January. And then, of course, you get all the people saying, "Oh, you shouldn't go in January because of Omicron," and she's just got to go.
Yeah,
it's got to be with your family.
Yeah, at a certain point, it's about balancing. It's the same as in business, risk reward. But obviously, there's a much more emotional element there that regardless of everything else, family comes first.
So true. Now we have 102 mutual connections on LinkedIn.
Oh, really?
Only that.
Growing
actually,
by the day, I'm sure.
Well, it is actually because of the Fluff world. But what's super funny for me is that like the most active I have are between 800 and 2,000 mutual connections, which is crazy.
Wow.
But like 100, that's not that many. I got 20,000. So 100, which is
A
good
little
for
bit
me.
of
I
dirt
like
on your shoulder
meeting
there.
new people. And I was thinking, looking at your background, EA, well, waiter, EA, production, creative, Web3. And today we might do things a little bit differently, but I've never heard the story, the genesis, the origins of Non-Fungible Labs.
Yeah.
Can you take us back to like actually how it began?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a lifetime ago already, but it was actually just the start of this year. I've been kind of dabbling in crypto for a while, just from a personal level. While I was, overseas, I think I first got into it in about 2014, 2015.
Crazy.
And then 2017 was when I really kind of took my first big punt. At the time, went in with my boss at the time, Michael Watt, who's ONZM, incredible Kiwi, international philanthropist, and someone I'm blessed to call one of my mentors. And saw the opportunity there, so we kind of built a portfolio together. He sort of footed the funds for it, and it all went very well in the kind of big build up of late 2017. Then there was the market crash of 2018, which put me kind of back to square one. And then also at the time was kind of had most of it stored in an exchange called Cryptopia, which is a New Zealand company, and is the largest theft in New Zealand history. I believe it was an inside job. Someone there essentially stole a large amount of, I think it was 20 plus million worth of cryptocurrency.
Did you lose some?
The thing is, I didn't actually, none of my accounts were compromised, but the exchange then shut down and went into liquidation. And, that's still an ongoing process, but I'm not holding my breath. So yeah, I think, everyone in the crypto space has this sort of trial by fire story, has been burned to some extent. And that really kind of, made me take a step back and actually kind of put me quite badly in debt for the next few years. But then, I always saw that what was happening in the space was the future. There was definitely, like any fledgling industry, there's a lot that needs to be worked through. I think when it comes to like decentralized finance, you're putting the power in the people's hands, but you're also putting the responsibility in the people's hands. And it's a big shift for people to understand that, hey, look, if my account gets hacked, if my bank account gets hacked, the bank sorts it out. If I compromise my wallet in any way, then that's on me. So yeah, I guess coming back to the actual kind of formation of Non-Fungible Labs, when I moved back to New Zealand at the start of 2021, quite unexpectedly, was kind of looking for opportunities that I could leverage my experience across, the broad range of things that I've done. And actually reconnected with Brooke Howard-Smith, who I'm sure most people in New Zealand will know.
Has he had a shave yet?
He has actually.
Has he? Is it gone?
Shave and a hair. I don't know if he's gone clean shave, but he's definitely trimmed
that,
up.
like that beer. He should have kept that for the party beer minting, don't you think?
Yeah.
So you reconnected with him and said, "Hey, bro, what's going on?"
Yeah. So I mean, he's I'd met him a few times in the past. Obviously, he's everywhere.
Been to some of his parties.
Yeah. He actually was great as well. He knows my brother and sister quite well, and he was incredible when it came to my brother's accident in 2014 and helped driving some of the fundraisers there. But we reconnected, and we're looking at different opportunities. Brooke's the kind of person that always has 6 different projects on the go, so I knew there would be, if it wasn't necessarily something that he was doing, he would have something that I could start exploring. And yeah, we're bouncing around a few ideas before. It was actually quite funny timing because we couldn't quite find the perfect fit for me at that stage. And then I actually went and reconnected with one of my friends, Jesse Metcalf, I've known for about 14 years. Incredible creative, one of those people who just has these really out there ideas and then just pursues them without really any sense of, how am I going to make money out of this?
Don't you love that?
Yeah, it's beauty. And it's, there's definitely a bigger shift there that's happening in the industry with, creatives actually kind of having their time to shine right now.
So good.
But we caught up and, we saw what was happening with NFTs.
So this is like February?
This was, it was mid-February, and maybe even a bit earlier. And we saw what was happening and these collections that were going, and I think the Beeple sale for 69 million had just happened, and so we were like, wow, there's actually a really incredible opportunity here, not just to kind of, jump in and make some quick money like a lot of people were doing, but we actually saw the power behind this technology to really empower creatives. And I think, long term, we're very much like automating ourselves out of all traditional jobs. I think creativity is going to be one of the real last bastions of kind of employment. And, we will be content creators and content consumers at the end of the day. So to be able to kind of empower creatives to really earn in perpetuity off their work, but also ensure that we have an immutable system in place that says, look, this is who created it, this is who owns it, this is how much it's worth. All of that sort of information is really, really powerful and quite a game changer. So Jesse and I were really kind of bouncing ideas around how we could break into the space. And funnily enough, while I was sat there with Jesse, I got a text from Brooke Howard-Smith saying, hey, I've got the project. Let's speak first thing Monday. Of course, it was NFTs. So it was quite interesting that he then pulled in someone he's worked quite closely with, Aaron McDonald, someone you've interviewed as well, also quite well known here in New Zealand.
Yes.
Runs Centrality. It's the largest blockchain group in New Zealand. I think he has about 60 portfolio companies between his two main sort of portfolios. And yeah, we kind of saw this opportunity to really do something in the NFT space that we wanted to look at ways that we could, not just do what everyone was doing, which is just create some art and sell it and try to make some money, but look at ways that we could utilize this technology in unique ways to drive the industry forward as a whole.
So it was not fluff from day one.
No, definitely not. I mean, actually, so Jesse and I had kind of started creating some pixel art projects. Which took off. There's one that we did, which was just a bunch of apes, and this was before Bored Ape Yacht Club, which is now kind of the gold standard in the community. But we were doing these. Jesse was hand drawing these pixel art apes, which actually took off. And when we first made our first sale for 1 Ether, which at the time was I think $2,500 US, we were like, wow,
this is fucking
incredible.
cool.
In the meantime, Aaron, Brooke, myself, and then a few others, Andrew Beatson from Bell Gully and a guy called Matt Hunter out of the US, formed Non-Fungible Labs, and we started looking at ways that we, a few different projects we had in mind. We started one called Unstoppable Art Machine, which unfortunately hasn't stopped. It's slowed down, but it's still unstoppable. And it was this concept of how we can bring the physical and digital art worlds together. And street art is something that's really kind of had this big cultural shift in terms of the art world. It was, you go back 20 years and it was, no one wanted street art. All the kind of big corporations or the governments were just against it, full stop. Whereas now, having an incredible piece of street art on your corporate building or on a, a government building or something is incredible, and it drives culture. So we were looking at ways, okay, how can we create something that's fun and engaging that kind of immortalizes this quite, street art's temporary by its nature. It's ephemeral. It can be, water blasted off, or the building can be destroyed. So, using NFTs to essentially immortalize some of the best street art in the world, but do so in a really fun and engaging way. I think after lockdown and, everyone being cooped up for so long, especially, myself in London through all of 2020, you guys were a bit more fortunate here.
Yeah, we were.
We essentially came up with this mechanic that was a treasure hunt. So we partnered with, some leading street artists, the likes of, Flocks from Cut Collective, to produce new.
She's amazing.
Really incredible. And what they've been doing is great. And it's, there'll be plenty more to come in that space. But they'd create a new piece of street art hidden somewhere, and would put a QR code on it, and then just start releasing clues through social media. The first person to find that piece of street art, scan the QR code, got the NFT of that. And I think the first one sold for about $10,000. But then we had a, royalty distribution that kept going back to, the artist and us, so that everyone was benefiting as this kind of went into, changed hands throughout time. That was a really interesting project. It was really fun, but it was very logistically heavy. And
Over what time from the start of that? Was that like a couple of weeks, a month?
So March through to we really kicked it off to March, and then it was around May that we had to June that we kind of had to start pausing it, just because we saw what other opportunities were coming onto the table, and there's a few other kind of factors that played into it. But yeah, we had some incredible pieces that went up here in New Zealand, Auckland, Wellington, Auckland, Christchurch, Dunedin, and then a friend of mine, Sito, in Melbourne, did I think it was about 4-story high piece, which was hidden as well, which is quite a funny one. And he actually went back and painted over half of it after it had been claimed. So the NFT is really the only kind of true version of the original. But as we saw, this industry moves so quickly. They say a month in blockchain is a year in any normal industry, and a month in the NFT space is a year in blockchain. So it's just the rate it moves at is phenomenal. If you take a day off, you're suddenly having to get back up to speed on what the latest developments are. We saw what had happened with Bored Ape Yacht Club, which was essentially a collection of. They followed the footsteps of CryptoPunks, which was kind of the original one, which at the time, most CryptoPunks, I think, were just given away for free. Now they sell for millions of dollars. And they kind of followed on this concept and produced this generative collection of characters, all 2D, that people kind of really liked the art and could resonate to. But I think the thing that they really did well was building a community around it, and this kind of promise of future utility and roadmap development, where CryptoPunks was, there you go, there's your CryptoPunks, goodbye. Bored Ape Yacht Club said, we're going to create a really strong community around it. We're going to start throwing events. We're going to introduce new utility, gaming, all of that sort of stuff as well. And that really set a new gold standard in the industry of kind of what was possible, because we've seen this now that, in this space, community is everything. It has to be, the fundamental thing that you strive for, is delivering as much utility as possible to your community. And that's something that we really took to heart when it came to kind of looking at what we wanted to explore.
So how connect the dots from there, right? You had a strategy around what you saw and what you wanted, but you didn't have the fluff.
No.
Where did that come from?
Funnily enough, I think the original
Don't
inspiration...
say Brock.
No.
Love you, Brock.
The inspiration was actually Jesse, my business partner, creative director, has a Flemish giant rabbit. We were looking at what was happening in the space, and lots of them were kind of animal themed, and so we were like, okay, well, let's do one that are rabbits.
Did someone in the team go, fuck off?
I think a lot of people in the team didn't expect us to do what we did, but it was interesting. We were exploring a lot of different styles. We were looking at different caricature, 1930s kind of animation style of different types of characters, or weird. We had about 6 different routes that we were looking at, and the Fluff just happened to be one of them. And then we engaged a 3D artist to start putting some concepts together based on the concept art that Jesse had done. And when the first kind of 3D model came back, we were like, oh wow, okay,
so
this is that.
Take me through that. When you first got it back, were you like, this is freaking cool? Yeah,
we really saw the potential, because I think most projects in the space have been working, as I say, in 2D, and we're really kind of focusing at okay, this is a profile picture for you on Twitter or LinkedIn or whatever it may be, because it's important to realize here, and a lot of people are like, okay, why would you have this as your kind of identity? Our digital identity is more prevalent than our physical identity nowadays. Totally. People engage with us far more digitally than they do physically, and especially when it comes to collecting art. If you have a piece of digital art that anyone in the world can see, it's actually much more exposure than you'd ever get for a piece of artwork that you have hanging on the wall in your house.
Do you think it's right?
Right. Yeah, I don't see why it would be wrong. I think we're building towards this just constant immersive kind of, essentially what the metaverse is this next generation of internet where the lines are being blurred between the physical and the digital. And we've obviously seen it, in the last sort of 10 years or so. Like, influencer wasn't a job 10 years ago.
No,
it didn't exist. Now it's, one of the most kind of prolific jobs in the world. But this is how people engage with each other now. Dating apps, Instagram, Facebook, it's all about, this is really our primary form of communication, and that's obviously been accelerated through lockdown. I think it's very important that we don't neglect the physical just because we have these digital channels, and that's something that we've really taken to heart. But
so it's rabbits, right? So the idea was rabbits. You hadn't got Fluff as a name at that point?
No. So yeah, we had this concept art come through, and we were looking at what everyone else was doing, as I said, 2D wise, but we were kind of looking forward to, okay, everything's heading towards the metaverse. And this was before Facebook did the whole PR stunt of changing their name.
This is March or April?
This would have been June, I think, by this point. Yeah,
which feels like a lifetime ago.
Exactly, yeah. We were looking at, okay, look, everything's starting to head to this kind of metaverse concept of people being able to engage in digital worlds that allow for just cross-pollination and interoperability of assets. You can bring your own creativity and bring it to these kind of open world environments. And so we're looking at what was happening in the space with 2D projects, and we're like, how does that transform to the metaverse? You can't be 2D in the metaverse. It just doesn't make sense. So we kind of went and took that approach from the start of, okay, let's make something that's 3D. Well, if it's 3D, we might as well animate it. If we're animating it, what do we want to animate to? Well, let's make some music. Let's make it dance. Let's add these kind of new features to it.
Was that an iterative process?
I think it all came together pretty quickly, to be honest. We kind of, we had seen, Jesse and myself in particular had been so deep in what was happening in the industry at the time. And I think just to kind of bring things back, obviously, as I said before, we had what Brooke, Aaron and myself were doing and what Jesse and I were doing. Obviously, it came to a point where we're like, let's just bring it all together. And Jesse has been really kind of core to everything we've done. Like, we would definitely not be here right now if it wasn't that core that said, hey, look, let's not have me splintered between these two. Let's just bring it all into one and create this powerhouse.
Was that an easy deal?
Yeah, I think, Aaron was kind of very generous in the way that he structured that. He kind of took the charge on that and said, he saw the potential in us. And I think that's one of the best things about Aaron.
He creates room though, eh?
Exactly. He sees people that have, great traits about them, and, just empowers them to pursue what they want to do. And pulls the deal together in a way that just makes everyone feel happy in the long run. So we got to this point where, as I said, we're looking at how do we make something that's, what everyone else will be doing in 6 months' time. And that's where we came into, okay, 3D, animated, music, some customizable elements. We can introduce new artists to create new scenes that your character goes to and travels to, as a kind of, first step towards an actual world building metaverse. But also, music, people, it's one of the kind of strongest emotional connections for people is music, and finding songs that they really vibe with, and it kind of defines their identity. That was key for us as well. And we actually partnered with Tom Lee from Lee Matthews, incredible producer, just prolific across any genre. We sat down in the studio with him and we're like, okay, we want one.
How did you get to him?
Actually, Jesse's good friends with him. His partner, B, has done some recording. She's a singer as well. But this is kind of the beauty of, I always thought that I would need to go to London, to big city life, to really be able to make it. But then there you're very much, a small fish in a big pond, and you don't necessarily have the networks in place. Whereas to take that experience of, hustling in London and then come back to New Zealand where everyone is just a phone call away, really. It's 2 degrees of separation here. I think just through Brooke, I could probably reach half of New Zealand. So to bring that and now it's at the point like, oh, we need someone like this. Okay, cool. Yeah, I know someone. Like it's that simple now.
Take me to Mint Day. Was that 8th of August or
8th of August, yeah. We we actually had to delay it at first just because there was a major update that rolled out to the Ethereum network, which kind of congested everything. So we had to push it back by about 48 hours. But we're at the point now where we had essentially created this collection. We had, I think, 270 different traits across 14 categories, which gave us a possible, permutations of, I think, 69 quadrillion, if
a lot?
every single, yeah, a lot. We obviously cut that down to 10K to something that's, palatable. And yeah, we launched the project with the support of Aaron's team at Centrality. And
Did you know? Did you know what was going to happen?
Honestly, it was surreal. You're there, you're building it all, but you're kind of, it's that you can't see the woods through the trees. You're so deep in it that you're like, will people even want this? Do people even care anymore? Even when it's you can feel the community hype in that, because we had already launched our Discord community.
Sure.
We had a few, I think, 1,000 people in there by that point, and there was a lot of people that were really excited. But I don't think anyone was
Were you
really
and Jesse
prepared
together
for what happened
on minting day?
No, I was actually at home. I think we were all kind of at our respective homes, but we definitely caught up shortly afterwards for a drink because what happened was we sold out the entire 10,000 collection in 40 minutes, which was close to 900 ether in revenue. I think at the time was about 4 million New Zealand.
That came to Non-Fungible Labs.
Came directly to us. But then also we had, I think in the next 48 hours, about 45 million New Zealand dollars traded in the secondary market.
Do you know what the trading volume is now?
Right now?
Since...
Off the top of my head, right now we're at just shy of 18,000 ether, which is over 100 million New Zealand dollars in secondary market volume. And as you know,
it's pretty crazy, right? Yeah. And under the smart contract, you as the lab
take 5%.
Take 5% the whole way.
Yeah. So that way this is why it's really interesting and exciting, because if you look at something like, the games industry or anything like that, it's basically, they get they have someone invest up front, they do all the work, and then they sell it and they take the revenue. And then maybe they push a couple updates to fix some bugs, but then it's all kind of add-ons. With this, because we're perpetually earning from it, we are constantly rolling out as much additional value to the community as we can. The vast majority of that for free as well, because especially with other collections, a lot of the time it's, oh, cool, I have this character, it's increased in value by 20 times, but the only way I'm going to see that is to sell it, and then I'm out of the community. For us, we don't want people to leave the community, so we're constantly dropping things for free to them, which provide value, but they can also liquidate if they want that money.
The roadmap, linear or non-linear?
Non-linear. No, it comes from all directions.
So you take inputs from people on the Discords. If someone says, what about this?
All the time, yeah. And this is the great thing, is that we want the community to be as involved as possible, because when you really feel like you're a part of the project like that and you have a say in the community, you're invested in it. It's like, imagine your most favorite brand in the world. If there was a kind of chat room that you could jump into at any moment with thousands of other people who love that brand, and you could say, hey, have you guys thought about this? And, the CEO or the creative director is there and says, hey, yeah, actually, that's a really interesting idea. Like, let's talk. Or, hey, my friend's a really interesting artist or musician. Would you guys be interested in collaborating? Like, that kind of direct communication with the community, I've never seen in any other kind of major industry before.
It's pretty interesting. Now, you guys are famous now in the meta.
In the space.
Right? Yeah. In the space, not in the linear world.
Yeah.
What's your advice and guidance around when you're a fucking nobody and no one knows you, to the point now where you can pick up the phone and go, hey, I'm Alex, the co-founder of Fluff World. Mm-hmm. Do you want to jam?
I think the biggest piece of advice I can say is just, if you believe in it, just put in the work. There'll always be haters. There'll always be people that doubt you throughout the journey. And they may be, some of your closest friends or, confidants.
You just got to keep believing.
You just got to keep at it. And you got to, try and innovate. It's very easy to copy what's already happening in the space, but if you're in a position where you can really kind of look at where things are going and try and do something that's unique and original and that people will really connect with, it's a lot of hard work. Like, obviously, you're going to be, if you really, really want to succeed, you're going to have to put in the long nights, the early mornings, sacrificing. I think I feel like I'm actually quoting Scribe here, sacrificing late
Well, how many
nights.
hours a week do you work?
Okay, so last night I think I finished at 2:30 a.m. Was back up for my first meeting at 8 a.m.
You look good. You don't look like you're tired.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's I'd say on average currently 80 plus hours a week, 80 to 100 hours a week.
Does anyone go, why are you working so hard?
I mean, my friends and family often, want me to take more of a break, and it's definitely, it's not sustainable long term. Like, this is the thing, we're in such a rapid growth rate, especially for my team as well. Like, I want my team to be in a position where they're able to take time off when they need.
Yeah.
I don't want to be driving people to kind of, oh, you have to do this. I want to have as much resource and contingency and structure in place to, allow people that flexibility. But the beauty is that so much of our team just love the space and live for it, and they want to put in those extra hours because.
But are they family men and women?
Yeah,
some of them got kids.
Yeah. A few of them have kids. And yeah, I think that's the key thing, is really just being able to define the balance. It's been a real interesting kind of cultural shift through lockdown and COVID, with everyone working from home. Before most people had quite clearly defined work hours, where now I think even for your average employee, like, that everyone knows that for the most part, like, you're accessible at any time. I think that's something that we do long term need to reclaim, more of that free time.
Do you do daily calls with the team?
Yeah.
The team getting together?
Yeah, because we're growing so quickly and because we have such a global team, it's really difficult to have every single person on a call at one time. We have it kind of structured with, like, our development team. We have kind of full development team twice a week calls.
But on Slack or on WhatsApp?
Yeah, we're all, work primarily through Slack. We obviously have our community in Discord, and then, use Zoom or Google Meets for most of our video meetings. But yeah, we're pretty much always in Slack, and you can spin up a call there pretty quickly.
Okay, so some rocket questions on Fluff World.
Mm-hmm.
What does the next 3 months look like?
I think in the next 3 months, you'll see a lot of big collaborations come into the space with some really incredible high profile people.
Like?
I can't.
No, you can. Brooke just messaged me and said, just let him do one. He can do one little secret. One alpha. Come on.
There's one that we literally just got off the call of before I walked in here.
He?
I would love to be able to leak any of that alpha, but we have very strict NDAs there. It's
the US?
US based.
Musician.
Iconic musician. I won't say any more than that.
Cool.
We're also we have a collection launching end of this week, Party Bears, which is a collaboration with a team from the US. They're actually behind the likes of Robot Chicken, BoJack Horseman, a few other of these really successful animated series. They've got a really great creative team there and from the start, when we first met with them, they had they kind of shared our vision. And look, at the end of the day, we're building a world. You can't build a world with one character. So, we're introducing these bears, which I think with a lot of people,
Can the bears go in the burrows?
They can go in the burrows.
Can they?
Yes.
When did the burrows come out?
The burrows, we're literally putting the final touches on at the moment as well. There might be a few extra surprises that we're having to sneak in last minute.
Like?
But the burrows will be within the next month.
Okay.
What
happens in February?
February, we have our next real world event. So we've started throwing our first event of
Miami
Fluff House at Art Basel in Miami.
So we're going to be one in New Zealand?
We'll definitely, now that we're opening up here, we'll start throwing some events here as well. The team that we have in the US have worked on Coachella and Burning Man, so they really know how to throw a good party.
I was quite interested watching the videos of Miami for me to see the types of people that are going there.
Yeah. It was really, and as I say, this goes back to us as a community. I think in this space, it's very male-centric. especially the crypto space, and it can get quite toxic in a lot of these spaces because it's all about pump and dumps and how I can flip and make money, and even if that's screwing people over, we had to just entirely buck that trend.
So how do you feel about the diversity in Fluff world?
I'm incredibly proud with what we've managed to achieve there. I think we probably have the highest, one of the highest kind of balances in terms of male and female in our community, and I think that comes down to a few things in terms of, the characters themselves. They're fluffy and fun. It's something that appeals a lot more across the spectrum than some of the other ones out there. But also just the way that we've handled our community. You get a lot of these people that come in and are very focused on, okay, when's it going to be worth this much and all that sort of thing. Whereas for us, it's, let's just create a really cool community of people that like to connect with each other and are welcoming. And, we often get people that come in like that are, obsessing over price, and we've essentially got it to the point now that
until I was like, fuck, I've just got to buy one.
Yeah. Now it's the community is so engaged, and we have so many just kind of champions of our cause that, someone jumps in like that and everyone's like, whoa, come chat, like chill with us, have some fun.
There's 10,000 fluffs, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there'll only ever be 10,000 fluffs.
Only ever be 10,000. Yeah.
But fluffs can breed.
They can.
So that has fluffies?
Flufflets.
Flufflets.
Yeah.
So that means there's going to be more than 10,000 fluffs.
Yes.
Or they'll
never age to the same kind of level. So the current 10,000 collection will always be the OGs. Will always be the kind of prime tier membership. As I say, we're building a world. There need to be more characters that come into this world, but we also want to ensure that we're rewarding the early adopters, but also not pricing out, the laggards. And this is something that I think we've seen in a lot of the kind of existing metaverse platforms. They are essentially just walled off game environments where, hey, we've created this world with X amount of land, 100,000 squares of land for sale, and then investors just come in and swoop it all up. And how are you ever going to get, like Facebook has close to 3 billion users. How are you ever going to get 3 billion users in a space like that if you've got massive companies buying up all the land? And you go into these spaces and the land is just empty. It's parked there as an investment. So there's nothing going on. It's not engaging. It's not, scalable. So what we're looking to is really, how can we create this concept of infinite scarcity? So
what does that mean?
Well, it's about how you can continue to grow the world or the universe, but still have scarcity within specific collections.
Yep.
So people will have collections or characters that they really resonate with, and those that come in earlier will kind of have, I guess, preferential treatment, but there'll always be entry points for new people to come in. It'll just be, a secondary or tertiary kind of level of membership that eventually, people may be able to work their way up with. But I think it's important that, when you look at the metaverse, you can't limit people's creativity. You can't limit the expansion of it. There obviously needs to be some standards and rules set in place of, okay, what is the kind of the technological requirements that everyone needs to meet? How do we deal with things like moderation and security in the metaverse? Because that's a really big thing that we see lots of scams in the space at the moment.
Yeah.
But also, how do we ensure that it's really a place that people can bring their own content to? Because, look, as I say, Facebook has close to 3 billion users. If everyone just had one character or avatar from a 10K collection like ours, that would be 300,000 of these individual collections being launched.
Yep.
Long term, there's going to be tools for people to create their own digital identity when it comes to joining the metaverse. But, and someone could theoretically create a fluff using one of these tools, but it would be, the knockoff one. They wouldn't really be part of the community and have all the benefits that comes with that.
It's super interesting because I had in my mind that NFTs, one of the things I had a problem with it was the finite scarcity.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the scarcity drove value. Mm-hmm. And what I've learned today from you is this concept of infinite scarcity.
Yeah.
It's quite interesting pairs. Like I also learned this from Andy Blood, who's written this book, Full Bleed, where he talks about getting pairs together that don't seemingly look like they fit.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing, right?
And this is the thing about the metaverse, and I think why it's quite interesting, and just the concept of a digital identity itself, is that many people don't necessarily resonate so much with kind of their physical appearance. And I think it's something that, you go through life, and often, you go through these journeys of discovering who you are as a person. But to have this flexibility to kind of adapt or evolve or create a digital persona that suits you as an individual is really powerful. And that's where you see people really start to come out of their shells and kind of discover who they are as a person.
Unreasonable question. What does 2023 look like? No idea.
I mean, we've got big plans on what we want to build. As we said, we're starting with characters. We're then building small spaces. There's these burrows that we're doing with Jessica, and Anton and the team at Beyond in Wellington. They've got some really incredible stuff in the works there. We've got some much bigger partnerships in the works to how we scale those out. Because, as I said, if you create a giant world with loads of land and you start throwing people into it, you don't really feel like you're in an engaged, immersive environment. You want to scale it out logically. So start with characters, then build small spaces, then build bigger communal spaces, then build cities, then build worlds, then build a universe. And allow, as you kind of scale as the community grows, so that you kind of pull the best from like these immersive AAA gaming titles where you really feel immersed in this world. But then you also pair that with the customizable elements of having unique user-generated spaces where people can kind of take their pride in, this is my home sort of thing. This is my space that I've curated. I'm going to bring people in from all over the world to come and have a party here with me. And, also empower these people. A lot of people, don't have any kind of animation or that sort of experience. So how can we build tools for them that just empower them to kind of pursue their creativity?
Agnostic on hardware?
Yeah, I think long term, there's going to have to be standards that are set, but it's also, the big word in the metaverse is interoperability. So how do we kind of set these standards that say, okay, look, the two kind of market leaders are Unity and Unreal.
Yeah.
What Unreal Engine's doing now with UE5 is just phenomenal. They released some footage, earlier with the Matrix and what they're doing there, and it's like you don't know whether it's actually Keanu Reeves or whether it's a version of him that they've rendered in MetaHuman. And yeah, I think there will be, long term, you'll probably see one or the other kind of take the crown. But as we say, it's about how do we provide as much interoperability as possible. And like for us with Fluffs, I think we've got 5 different models currently in development so that they can jump into any world you want. Basically, it's, if it's Decentraland, if it's Sandbox, if it's some other game environment, to be able to just essentially, it reads, okay, you own this one. I know that based on the standards of this platform, you need to have a version that is like this and has this kind of poly count or this level of quality that allows it to scale into that world.
Will you ever be able to drop your own music into your Fluff?
See, the kind of issue there is just around intellectual property. If someone was to basically, rip off some big existing track and
then
kind
you
of
get your
push that
ass
through,
sued.
then it puts us into an interesting place. It's definitely something we want to do. At the end of the day, we want to allow people to kind of customize and make them as unique as possible. But I think there's definitely a bigger conversation here as a whole when it comes to just intellectual property in the metaverse. It's something that's so dynamic, and I think it's really going to reshape a lot of major industries, music in particular.
For good,
yeah, because at the end of the day, I saw someone the other day say, oh, I just sold an NFT of my song for, I think it was half an ether, and that's more than I would have gotten if I got 50,000 streams on Spotify. Totally. And when you're in the space for as long as we have, half an ether doesn't feel like a lot of money. It's important to kind of contextualize that sometimes in terms of really putting that back into dollars and cents. But in the intellectual property side of things, you're going to have brands, you're going to have existing rights holders into the space. But the reason we're not concerned if Marvel released a character collection, because they're not going to hand the IP over to the community. With Fluffs, you own that character. You can do whatever you want with it. We have a group called the Hume Collective who have turned one of their Fluff, called Angel Baby, into what they're calling a metastar, and it is literally
Angel Baby's in the US, right?
Yeah.
Is it a person? Or is it a collective?
It's a metastar. It's the thing is, so the team behind it,
It's crazy, right?
They've produced songs for a lot of kind of top 100 artists, but in those sort of situations, they're like, okay, well, we're just kind of in the background, and it's all kind of on this artist. Whereas they realize, actually, if we create an avatar that is our form of musical outlet, it can live forever. We have kind of full control over the creative direction, but also, we're not limited to one person being that star. Like, you can have different producers and that all kind of using that as their distribution channel.
I'm going to go a bit rando. If you think about farms, right, in New Zealand, farms used to be sole operators, and then become corporatized. So you got aggregation of ownership and scale. Do you worry about aggregation of fluff ownership that ends up being bought and controlled by people who've got fuckloads of money, not individuals?
Yes, but I think at the end of the day, what as I've said, one of the biggest forms of value for Fluff World is the community itself. If the community is suddenly three companies sat there holding them all, it's not going to be a fun environment, and then the value kind of disappears.
How many staff you got now? 24?
Closing in on 30. We're, I think, 3 about 4 months ago.
Start of 2023, how many staff?
I would say about 100.
Okay. Business model of Fluff World is, because once you've got the 10,000 out there, and then you've got other products that you mint. Then when you mint them, then you get the gross revenue, and then you get the net revenue over time.
Although a lot of the time we don't even take any upfront. So we did a kind of companion collection called, which we call thingies.
They look like spiders. My kids are like, that's a spider.
They are spiders, but it was a little, it kind of started as a bit of a joke and like a throwback to What Now and Jason Gunn with the thingy there. But it was just a name that we landed on and we liked. And we created these little cute furry spiders, but we wanted to do something really interesting with them in terms of, every collection to date has quite a structure where it's, okay, there's these few different categories, and then it's a combination of them. What we did with the thingies was you trained an AI on some of the best art, as 10,000 pieces of art throughout history, and then it created 10,000 new pieces of unique art, and we layered those as the fur texture of the thingy itself. So each thingy has a unique kind of, it is a piece of living art. We're also then working with our partners at Altered State Machine, who are really leading the charge in terms of artificial intelligence development in the space of NFTs and the metaverse, to basically allow each of these thingies to have a brain which is trained as an artist. So these spiders are generative artists in themselves.
There's a brain in them.
There is a brain in them.
I did not know that. I did not know that. That's super interesting. So you don't need your ASM box.
No, it's integrated brain. It also means that you can't, take it out. We don't want you to dissect the thingy and take the brain out and put into, much like with what ASM is doing, is essentially those brains are interoperable between different collections and can be trained to do different things. They're launching with their football game, AFA, and they'll obviously be trained in terms of how they play football, but, they can be applied to fighting games. It can be applied to, chatbots. It can be applied to even, managing your trading of your portfolio. There's an incredible range of applications for them. With thingies, we've taken a slightly different approach where we basically just integrate it into one, and we want to allow people to kind of experiment in terms of the art that it can create, and we're introducing a couple different variable factors that will help influence that. But it's an integrated model there.
One of the things that defines this Web3 metaverse world is speed, right? So I play golf, right? I can't, and I've always believed, and I was a lawyer, to be good at golf, you need to spend 10,000 hours, right? You've heard this concept of 10,000 hours. Do you think to be good, great, and meta, it's different? It's not as many hours?
Well, I think it's difficult because it's such a fast-moving industry, and certain skill sets don't necessarily apply the same as they would 6 months ago. I think it's just about you really having your finger on the pulse and looking at what is happening, but also really taking that kind of future-focused approach of where do we want this to be long term? What do we want the metaverse to be in the future? We don't want it to be just, if we don't learn from our mistakes that we've made here in the real world, then the metaverse is not going to be a great environment either.
Do you have a control thesis?
I'm actually working on a manifesto, which titling it. It's basically just a bunch of questions that I'm not smart enough to answer in terms of how do we deal with all of this sort of stuff around, making sure that we build a very open and diverse metaverse that empowers everyone who jumps in there, that it doesn't, price out the laggards by overly rewarding the early adopters, that we deal with things like security, both of identity and information, but also finance, in a way that's very easy for anyone to jump in. There's a whole range around, technological standards as well. How do we, because everyone's racing to build the metaverse, it's not going to be built by one person or one company. Everyone will have a say in it, but let's kind of, set some standards in place globally that at least we can all work to. And also, there's so many different elements around, community management, moderation as well. How do we deal with moderation in the metaverse? You've seen like a platform like Reddit works well because it's quite strongly moderated, whereas you go into 4chan and it's just a nightmare. You get the worst of the keyboard warriors come out there, and we definitely don't want that in the metaverse. That's not to say it won't be a blanket approach. There will be worlds that are very family friendly, and there'll be worlds that are war zones. But it's there still need to be some standards that are in place and ensure that we're kind of as I say, learning from the mistakes that we've made as a species in the real world, and also not neglecting the real world in the process. This shouldn't be, we've fucked up the real world, so we're just going to create a digital world to all go live in like the Matrix. It's how can we utilize this in a way that actually gives back to the real world, and that's something that we're doing. 10% of our profits go back to supporting primarily kind of conservation and environmental charities.
Yeah, you've done
sustainable coastlines. Yeah, we did $100,000 donation to them. We've got a few other ones like that coming up in the next couple of months.
So good. Now, one of the questions I always ask is what surprises people to know about your history and your patents, right? Now, obviously in doing my research, right, I was like, you were a waiter at Chibo.
Yep.
And actually, when you went to the UK, you did the role of executive assistant.
Yeah, well, I think like a lot of people, sort of mid to late teens, started working in hospitality just to have some money coming in, but quickly learned just the power that you get from working in an environment like that. I think, no matter what job you're doing, like if you really give it your all, people will notice. And in hospitality, especially working at Chibo, was an incredible experience because it's very much fine dining, but with a very casual attitude to it. So you're serving some of the richest people in New Zealand, but you treat them like anyone else, and they appreciate that because they're so used to everyone looking up to them. And this goes across the board. When you meet your idols, treat them like you're a friend as opposed to your idol, because as soon as you put them up on that pedestal, it creates this dynamic. Now, working in Chibo was incredible because especially when it's like the December Christmas rush and you're 3 times capacity and a table booked for 20 and turns up for 20 with 25, no is not an answer. You have to make it work. You've got to roll with the punches, and you got to do it with a smile on your face. So to really kind of work in that environment and learn, how to read people, how to tailor service to them, how to really create a unique experience that they feel like, it's personalized to them, is, hospitality is one of the purest forms of customer service. And I think no matter what job you're in, at the end of the day, you're serving a customer. So whether you're the CEO or whether you're a janitor, there's a customer service element to it. And I think everyone should have that sort of experience in their life.
And then EAs roles, why did you do those?
Yeah, so I mean, I went into a tech startup here as project manager after I graduated, and then had to kind of do the big OE. I was New Zealand.
How old were you then?
I would have been 22 at the time.
Okay.
New Zealand's amazing, but it's it's geographically isolated and socially claustrophobic. I went and traveled the world for 4 months, ended up broken homeless in London, had big ambitions in the kind of getting into the music industry there, but kind of fell back into hospitality for a while, just working for a temp agency. That temp agency actually then happened to have a contract with Ronnie Scott's jazz club, one of the top jazz clubs in the world. And so I started helping out some of their Christmas lunches there. First day working under one of the waiters, took £5 in tips. Second day, had my own section, got 65 quid in tips. Third day was looking after a third of the club with the other temp staff working beneath me. Took 270 quid in tips off one table and went and shared it out with every single person working. And that's when the management were like, okay, you're coming to work for us full time. Fast forward a few months later, and so I was kind of, quickly being offered, more and more roles there. And I think what kind of set me aside there was that kind of Kiwi element of like, no jobs beneath me. I'm going to hustle and I'm going to have fun with it. Whereas there's a lot of more traditional service that you get in Europe. But then I met the owner, Ronnie Scott's co-owner, Michael Watt, who's an officer of the New Zealand Order of Merit, from Christchurch originally, but spent most of his life overseas. And
so you met him at the restaurant?
Yeah. I waited on him when he came in with his record label at the time, which was Alt J and a few of those guys. And he has had a prolific life, coming from nothing, building out a sports empire with what he built at CSI, which was, they're kind of credited with brokering some of these big deals around Super Rugby and the Premier League and that sort of thing. I looked after him. He saw, my attitude and my approach to everything, and he said, "You're not working for Ronnie Scott's anymore. You're working for me."
And you went, okay?
Yeah. That was the next 4 years of my life, was his right-hand man as international development manager. And that put me in a position to really kind of dip my toe into all sorts of different industries that I'd never had much experience with, and see it all from a very high level, and someone of his caliber, how they operate. He had come from nothing. He had thought his whole life, I need to be rich to be happy. And he got to the point of, making his billions and then realizing that actually money didn't mean all that much. So he shifted his whole mentality and said, look, I'm going to, focus on things that I love, passion projects. As long as I've got enough money to look after myself and the people I care about, anything else should either be reinvested or given to a worthy cause. And I was quite fortunate in that sense to lead a lot of his philanthropic projects, especially in the peak of the refugee crisis in sort of 2014, 15. I was working out on the Greek islands, mostly on Kos, patrolling the beaches at night, pulling people off boats. And it was just an incredibly kind of humanizing experience, because when they're just people on a TV, you can't relate. But
when you're there,
and you speak to these people who are literally jumping in these tiny little inflatable dinghies. They're wearing life jackets that aren't actually life jackets. They're packed full of like polystyrene, which would get waterlogged and weigh you down. But the people on the other side don't care about that. They're just selling them to try and make some money. You have the conversations with these people, and they're like, oh yeah, I was a neurosurgeon back in Syria. My wife was a history teacher. Here's our house that was this incredible like 6-bedroom house.
Does it weigh on you when you hear that, or does it empower you?
I think it's difficult. It's easy to kind of feel guilty, but then it's also like, well, why would I feel guilty? Like, I wasn't the one that put myself in this position. I think the best thing you can do is really just learn humility from it, and kind of, we're very fortunate, even just for us here in New Zealand, to be born in what could quite possibly be the best country in the world. But just to have that kind of global perspective and really realize that you're not entitled to anything. It all comes down to hard work. And even then, you're a victim of circumstance most of the time. So,
it's pretty interesting.
It's very, it's such an incredible experience to see these people that had these incredible lives. And, Syria and Lebanon and that region, it was beautiful. It's obviously there's a lot of things wrong with it, but the people as well are very welcoming and friendly for the most part, because they've seen, the other extreme. They know what it's like to fear for your life on a daily basis. So they really squeeze every single ounce out of life. And that's an incredible thing to kind of be able to take home with you.
And you're still involved because you're on the board of Salam.
Yeah, Salam LADC. They're a really great grassroots organization based in the Bekaa Valley of Lebanon. They work really well in kind of filling the gaps between the larger NGOs. I haven't been out there for a few years, and really enjoyed working with the team on the ground there. But just like Lebanon, most people don't realize actually has, I think, the highest population of refugees per capita of any country in the world. It's about 35% of the country are refugees.
The thing that all these patterns that I see and observe when people like you talk is what the metaverse does and what digital does is that it collapses and connects an end user, or it connects people.
Yeah.
And there's all these layers of bureaucracy.
Yeah.
The people that give out the money.
Yeah.
It changes it, and like Discord server creates that connectivity where
Yeah.
like anyone can message Aaron.
Exactly. And it's decentralized as well. There's no one
amazing.
controlling the narrative, really. Like, media is great for all of the good it does, but it's obviously, there's a lot wrong with the traditional media outlets as well. And there's always kind of inherent biases behind what news stories are being told and how they're being presented. If people are empowered and have the tools to be able to share their own story with the world from their own perspective, you really get a much more kind of humanizing and real kind of experience, and it allows you to connect with these people from all over the world in a way that you would never get through traditional media.
Brands that inspire you?
I mean, there's a few in terms of like, I guess more looking like traditional brands like Patagonia, like what they're doing in terms of the way that they're constantly giving back. I would say Artifact, RTFKT, was one of the leaders in the metaverse space in terms of what they're doing with digital fashion. They've just sold to Nike.
Did you feel good about that?
I'm very conflicted, to be honest. There was a few things of them that I didn't agree with. They had strict clauses around the ownership of their latest avatar collection called Clone X, basically saying if you have the ones that have design elements from Takashi Murakami, who's an incredible artist, you don't own any of the intellectual property to that character. If you have ones that don't have any of his IP, then you can commercialize it up to $1 million. But there was no real kind of, is that $1 million a year? Is that $1 million full stop? Is it, how do we actually manage this process going forward? Because they say, you have to contact us if you want to do anything more. Now, if this digital avatar is going to be your personality in the metaverse or online, you need to be able to do whatever you want with it. Like, I shouldn't have to go and ask Artifact or Nike now, hey, like, do you mind if I bring my character into this music video? Or do you mind if I train him to be a store owner using an ASM brain and have him there, commercialized because he's running a shop in the metaverse or something like that? So it was very conflicting because I really respect what the guys with Artifact have been doing in terms of pushing the industry forward. And just the level of detail when it comes to their art is really, really incredible. But I do feel like this is quite a backwards play because they were kind of positioning themselves as the new Nike of the Web3 Nike.
Which is super interesting when you start to see the traditional companies coming into the meta.
Yeah.
And that's just going to keep coming, right? And they're going to bring a control thesis,
they're coming
right?
droves. And it's a lot of them are doing it very wrong. Pepsi did a drop recently, which they basically just put some clip art together,
and they're called Friends and Hey Friend.
And it just reeks of, it's like Zuckerberg and what he's done with rebranding to Meta, which in the most part was a bit of a PR stunt to kind of get away from what all the negativity around the data leaks and what they've been mining. And you think about that, if Facebook's controlling the metaverse, they're going to be mining every single piece of data they can from you. Your biometrics, the scans of your eyes and the room around you while you wear a VR headset, all of that's up for grabs.
Who are the sleeping giants? And where are they? Like, who are the people that you girls see, but the rest of us don't?
I mean, Altered State Machine, for one. We're very fortunate to see that, like, one of our biggest competitors is our partner.
One of your biggest competitors is your partner.
Yeah, in terms of they're constantly challenging us in terms of what they're doing and the quality of stuff that they're putting out is challenging us to up our game,
to be better,
and vice versa. They have like patent pending on fingerprinting artificial intelligence ownership as an NFT. Which is incredible because, when it comes to like the metaverse, it's not always going to be players there. Where you go into any game environment, there's what's called NPCs, non-player characters. So to be able to essentially own those and train them to do certain things for you is really exciting. Outside of that, I mean, I think the biggest thing about the space is that it often just comes out of the blue. It's just these projects just appear out of nowhere.
Do you scan?
I try to. I honestly don't have as much time as I would like to really be digging into the industry. And even in our Discord, like I just don't get that much time to spend in there. I want to try and kind of start allocating set windows where I'm just in there with the community and kind of talking to them. And
because that's empowering too, right?
exactly. It's great. And it's really good to be able to hear firsthand the feedback from them. But also they love, whenever me or Aaron or Brooke or Jesse jumps in, because they feel like some leaks might be brewing and they can try and twist our arm a little bit.
Moving around a bit, the craziest thing you've ever seen in hospitality, like at Chibo or the jazz club, like the craziest thing you saw when you were...
We had Prince perform on his Hit and Run tour. I think it was about 6 months before he died, in 2014.
Yeah.
I was looking after the VIP section there, which was Noel Gallagher, Rita Ora, Stephen Fry, Adele, Michelle Rodriguez, Cara Delevingne. I can't really go into too much of the crazy stuff that I saw, but there were definitely some shenanigans that went on. And I think that was interesting for me because, especially coming from New Zealand, that's the first time I'd ever been around people of that caliber. But
did you go home that night and go,
wow, yeah. But also, like, once I'd kind of got them all their first drinks, I was just kind of hanging out with them, and I was chatting to Noel for a bit, and it's interesting because so often people hold these people on such a high kind of pedestal that to actually kind of, as I say, just approach them like any other human and just have a real kind of conversation with them is really interesting, because you remember at the end of the day that, look, it doesn't matter if you have 5 followers or 5 million. You're a human. You have a basic set of needs and wants and all of that.
Now, I think a lot recently about our diverse communities, Māori, Pacifica, Wahine, youth.
Mm-hmm.
They're sort of diverse and sort of not, and I overlay that with the creatives in those communities. And I think not why they should be interested in Web3 or in NFTs. I think about how can they pursue their interest?
Yeah.
How do they make the step?
Yeah.
And I hear lots of people saying that Web3 needs creativity.
Yeah.
So I suppose my question to you is, like, how do we help those people, the collectives? Like, there's a group of Māori collective artists coming together saying, wow, this is a really interesting area. How do we go?
Yeah, there's a few different approaches. We, there's a project that launched earlier this year called Titan Tiki, and we helped bring that to market and really pushed it through our community, just because it is really important to bring that diversity to the space. Our team it's a lot of kind of white men involved. Like, we want to be as diverse as possible. So it's, but I guess it's just the nature of the industry, and how can we really start pushing that. So I think a big thing is just education. Put programs in place where we can empower these individuals, no matter who they are, no matter where they're from, no matter how they identify. Give them tools to play with. 3D modeling and animating and that sort of stuff is going to be such a big industry going forward, because that's kind of where all of this is leading. So how do we get people excited about that? I think being a creative, up until recently, you're either, the 1 or 2% who really make it, or you're a struggling artist your entire life. And now we're in this position where, the artist is the empowered one, and they have the platform there
so
to be able to,
exciting, eh?
to just be able to, as I said before, this musician who sold, just a track to someone as an NFT and made more than they would from 50 million odd streams on Spotify. I think platforms like Spotify have a very short window to adapt or die. But when it comes to how we empower individual creators, there's a lot of work to be done. We are seeing more and more brands break into the space, and they will start to dominate it. So for us as a company, we want to look at tools that we can produce outside of Fluff World, because we are.
And you're going to do more projects, right?
Yeah. This is a very kind of one specific aesthetic. We're really proud of everything that we've done with it, but it doesn't necessarily to make sense to push everything under that one brand. But also, as a company as well, we have some incredible talent in the creative space, 3D space, and the development engineering space. So how can we utilize these resources to actually push the entire industry forward as a whole, but not just for us, like put out solutions that anyone can use that helps them, it breaks down some of these barriers to entry for people.
Yeah, and I think that, that aspect to lighting the path for people to see is pretty exciting. So now, secrets. You haven't let any major ones out. I always go back and watch.
Yeah.
But is there anything else that you want to like drop now before we have a very special end?
I really wish. I mean, it's.
Go on. Just anything. Go on. Something.
What we can announce is there is a major, I guess, new world of content that will be kind of introduced to Fluff World as an add-on, and it's, I guess, the first step in terms of actually building out worlds, because it's not just going to be one world, it's going to be a universe. And that's from one of the biggest creative powerhouses in New Zealand who are respected on a global stage. That's all I can say for now.
I think I know who it is, but I'm not going to say who. Now, a couple of weeks ago, we went for a walk with Aaron, right, around Iraqi Basin, Pat and I, and we pitched this vision around creating a Metaverse, Web3, a 5G accelerator called Funaki, right? And the idea was that we really wanted to create the opportunity for those communities to be able to come to learn virtually how they can do that. And so we walked around. It's a classic story. We got halfway around and Aaron's like, look, this is cool, but is this what you're saying? And we're like, yeah, and like humbling when you have to pitch, right? So we pitched and then we got around the rest and he's like, yeah, cool, we're in. And so part of that is creating this accelerator. And for us today, we're going to sign this agreement that we're doing with Non-Fungible Labs, who's going to be one of our partners alongside Centrality and ASM. So this is good to know, ASM, Dave, Phil, I'm coming to get the signed agreement. But here's Rach, our general manager.
Hey.
Come in, Rach, come in, join. We've got the contract. But you have to sign it. Rach is going to meet you.
Yeah, lovely to meet
you. You sit there, and we're going to do this as a final little. This is an agreement. You can see that there. Pete can zero in on that between Funaki and
let's go.
Non-Fungible Labs.
Okay, who goes first?
And this is a partnership. Oh, Alex can go first. So he's like going, what am I signing here? It's a 20-page agreement.
No, I read through this all the other night as well. So it's never sign something you haven't read. Terms and conditions.
There we go. You're just forcing you. Can you hold that one, Hammy?
Yeah, it's Rachel's birthday this week. How old were you, Rach?
34.
34.
Nice. Happy birthday.
So, yeah. First day in Auckland in 3 months.
So just before Christmas, we're launching a rangatahi campaign. Beautiful. Oh, yeah. Just before Christmas, we're launching a rangatahi campaign for our youth that will feed into our accelerator, which is called Funaki. And that accelerator is going to kick off with some sprints in February, March, and it's going to be at scale. We've got some idea how it's going to work and some idea of not knowing how it's going to work. But we're pretty excited to have Non-Fungible Labs, Centrality, ASM, 2 Degrees, MSD as partners, and it's something that I and we are very grateful for the belief. And so, Merry Christmas.
Very exciting.
I found it amazing. It's so cool to actually get to know people like you and hear your story. It's so inspiring.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, right, everyone? Merry Christmas.
Cheers.
See ya. Let's go.